So, the United States has left Afghanistan. Supposedly. Okay? Supposedly. Now, there's a striking image that has emerged of a Chinook helicopter evacuating people from the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, right? And it's distinctly reminiscent of what happened in Vietnam during the fall of Saigon in 1975, right? So let me show you this headline over here from NPR. It says, U.S. Embassy staff in Afghanistan are evacuated to Kabul's airport. So maybe some of you know, the United States went and set up a provisional temporary base in Kabul's airport. And, you know, they took all the embassy staff there. Now, it's reported that Biden did this because he wanted to avoid a Saigon moment. Well, he got it anyway. Take a look. This is, the above image is Saigon 1975, and this is Afghanistan 2021 down below. Those look strikingly similar. Strikingly similar. As a matter of fact, Joe Biden said just last month on July 8th, I think it was, he said there's not going to be a Saigon moment. He said you're not going to have helicopters landing on rooftops and evacuating people. Here, take a look. This is what he said.
This withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comfortable.
Yeah, well, that turned out to be false, didn't it? That turned out to be completely false, because here we are. And so, you know, it's not just a funny situation or something, because, you know, while the diplomats, they get out safe and they're okay, many people in Kabul have been trying to flee because of the advancing Taliban. And of course, the United States has abandoned, you know, even the people who collaborated with the NATO occupation, who worked with them. And I know I saw someone raise an interesting point, saying that, you know, they weren't all interpreters. You always hear on the news, they talk about interpreters. Not everyone was interpreting. You know, some people did other things when they collaborated with the U.S. You know, very gruesome things. Not everyone, but you have to consider the whole dimension of the occupation. You can't just look at, oh, there were interpreters. No, this is very naive. Now, just to show you the scope of their advance, how fast the Taliban has been advancing. This is, on the left, you have, this is dated 9th of July, and you can see in red the provinces that are under Taliban control, okay? That's last month. That's July 9th. Here, a month later, August 15th, they've taken the whole country. They've taken Jalalabad, which is another major city. They took it without a fight. They've taken Kabul, which is the capital. And not just taking it, they're right there in the presidential palace, right? They're in the presidential palace in Kabul. This is filmed exclusively by Al Jazeera, right? So not even a week ago, barely a week ago, the president, Ghani, was sitting at this very desk in front of this very painting, and he was saying that, oh, you know, everything's under control. And he's fled. So the president of Afghanistan has fled the country, right? He has fled. And so have the security forces, right? So do you know, for years and years and years and years, what have they been saying in Afghanistan, the Americans and the British and so on? They've been saying, oh, yeah, we're training Afghan forces. Yes, we're giving them equipment and training, and then they can fend for themselves. Yes. Yeah, well, that's a lie. That is a lie. They lied the entire time to continue the occupation, right? They said, we can't leave. If we leave, Al-Qaeda is going to resurge. The Taliban will take over. They'll give shelter and amnesty to terrorists. We can't leave. We have to keep training the Afghans. Okay. 20 years later, nothing. 300,000, supposed 300,000 Afghan security forces vanished overnight. Many of them, I saw a video of them going to the border with Iran, As you recall, Afghanistan borders Iran, and fleeing there, and of course, with them vanished the equipment. You have to recall that the United States is not in Afghanistan for humanitarian purposes. It's there to make money. And one of the ways that it makes money is selling arms, right? And so it does this not just to, there's not just a military-industrial complex between the U.S. government, of course, and its arms manufacturers, but of course it does this with other countries, right? So it'll have NATO countries buy U.S.-made weapons, and it will go and invade countries and then supply their new puppet governments with U.S.-made weapons, right? And this includes everything ranging from, AR-15, M4 rifles to, Chinooks, Blackhawks, Humvees, you name it, right? So they'll give them everything. Obviously not the same amount and caliber as themselves, but they will give them a lot. And this is one of the major criticisms, if you want to call it, which is kind of like an understatement. When ISIS, they took over Iraq and northern Syria, what did they take with them? They took all the American equipment. You could even see them wearing American boots. Have you ever realized that in those videos of ISIS, they're wearing American boots? Yeah, because they took them, right? This is embarrassing, honestly. And they were asking Jake Sullivan, who's the national security advisor, just earlier. They're asking him, like, well, do you know what happened to all this equipment we gave the Afghans? And he's like, well, we don't have like a list of all the articles. Yeah, we know. So just going back to the humanitarian aspect of it, because we have to remember that this is a brutal occupation of 15 years, right? I know the British and the Americans, they like to pretend they're the victims. They're not the victims. The real victims are the Afghans who've been living under occupation. And just even the departure is so emblematic of the relationship, right, between occupier and occupied. I want to play you a clip here. This is from Kabul airport, okay? Because as I said, the Americans, they moved all the evacuation proceedings to the airport. And what they did essentially is they hijacked it. They hijacked the airport. So they blocked all commercial flights. So even, for example, if you are, you're from Tanzania, it doesn't matter. You have nothing to do with the United States. You're maybe a journalist and you want to leave, you can't leave because the United States military has blocked the flights. They're like, screw you. We're taking over the airport. We're taking care of our own, including the dogs. So the dogs get better treatment than the humans for some reason. It would be nice if both were evacuated, but no. So let me play you a clip here of an American plane taking off, and you can see all these people that have been left behind, not necessarily all of them translators or interpreters, but just civilians, right? So as you can see, the civilians have been left behind. The U.S. is like, screw you, we're taking care of our own. Yeah, and this is a long-standing issue, right? You can go and watch clips of John Oliver, although I don't know if you should, talking about this issue many years ago, saying that, this is a man, for example, or there's this group of people who were interpreters who were helping the U.S. occupation forces, and the U.S. won't give them visas, right? And there are numerous instances of people who worked with the NATO occupation who have been killed by the Taliban or others for collaborating with the invading armies. Not just today, I'm talking in general, right? Although this is definitely not just an issue about interpreters. As I said, there are people, civilians, who just want to leave. They can't leave because the U.S. military hijacked the airport, right? So this arrogance, this selfishness, it's there, even, and I'd say maybe especially during the evacuation, right? So which again, what's the point here? The point is it's not about humanitarian endeavors, right? Because they've been selling the war in Afghanistan as, oh, we're here because we have to help people. It's a human, it's a mission about human rights, about democracy. No, it's not. No, it's not. When the chips are down, okay, the U.S. takes care of itself. And I kindly remind you of when Trump, you remember when they were saying he pulled out of Syria? He never pulled out of Syria. He just relocated troops from northern Syria to eastern Syria so they could occupy the oil. And, they were saying, oh, he's abandoning our allies, the Kurds, Now, to a certain extent, this is true. This is definitely true. The Kurds went and made a deal with the Syrian government to protect them from Turkey because of this, right? So there's definitely a threat there. And my point here is that this goes to show you that the United States does abandon its allies, so to speak, right? And whether it's in the Kurds or here, this is a recurring theme. This is my point. And I want to play you a clip here of Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, who, was asked, don't you think this is a Saigon moment? Don't these two things look strikingly similar? And of course, he denies it, right? Like cognitive dissonance. Just no, it's not true. No.
On avoiding. President Biden is intent on avoiding a Saigon moment. That's a reference, of course, to the hasty and humiliating U.S. evacuation from Vietnam. But with this troop surge to airlift Americans out of Afghanistan, aren't we already in the midst of a Saigon moment?
No, we're not. Remember, this is not Saigon. We went to Afghanistan 20 years ago with one mission.
President Biden is intent on avoiding a...
Here, I'll finish the rest of the sentence for you. He says we went to Afghanistan with one mission, and he says that mission was defeating the folks who attacked us on 9/11, right? Well, I'd say you failed at that. He thinks they succeeded. I'd say you failed because you have more terrorism than ever. Northern Syria, well, for now it's northern Syria. At one moment, half of Syria was occupied by ISIS, right? As well as northern Iraq. Right now, Idlib in northern Syria is occupied by HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is a rebrand of al-Nusra, which is a rebrand of al-Qaeda. And the U.S. is supporting them, right? So this idea that, no, this is ridiculous. Al-Qaeda is still there. They just rebranded it. So this is ridiculous. This is not true. And he's asked this again on ABC. Take a look, right? This denial.
Seems too orderly or standard operating procedure. I just last month, President Biden said that under no circumstance, and that was his word, those were his words, under no circumstance would the U.S. personnel, embassy personnel, be airlifted out of Kabul in a replay of the scenes that we saw in Saigon in 1975. So isn't that exactly what we're seeing now? I mean, even the images are evocative of what happened in Vietnam.
Let's take a step back. This is manifestly not Saigon. The fact of the matter is this. We went to Afghanistan 20 years ago.
Look how nervous he is. He's like, hey, listen, buddy. This is evidently not Saigon. So let's take a step back over here.
With one mission in mind, and that was to deal with the people who attacked us on 9/11. And that mission has been successful. We brought bin Laden to justice a decade ago. Al-Qaeda, the group that attacked us, has been vastly diminished. Its capacity to attack us again from Afghanistan
lies
has been, right now, does not exist. And we're going to make sure that we keep in place in the region the capacity, the forces necessary to see any reemergence of a terrorist threat and to be able to deal with it. So in terms of what we set out to do in Afghanistan, we've done it. And now, all along, the president had a hard decision to make. And that decision was what to do with the remaining forces that we inherited when we came to office that were in Afghanistan, with a deadline established by the previous administration to get them out by May 1st. That's the decision he made. We've been in Afghanistan for 20 years, $1 trillion, 2,300 American lives lost. And again, thankfully, having succeeded in doing what we set out to do in the first place, the president made the determination that it was time to end this war for the United States, to get out of the middle of a civil war in Afghanistan, and to make sure that we were looking at our interests across the world, around the world, and that we were set up to advance those interests.
Okay, so a couple of points here, right? Do you see how convenient this is? Like, when the optics of it look bad, they're like, oh no, look, we stand by our decision. We have to leave. Look at the money we've spent, right? Like, no mention of the Afghans they've killed, because right, that comes last. You know, now they're concerned, and they're pointing fingers at Trump as if you know Trump started the war. Look, man, Joe Biden was in politics, right? He was helping Bush start the war in Iraq. And, you know, he's been in Congress 40 years, and he was vice president 2 terms. He supported that war on terror. He supported the war in Afghanistan. So you can't come here and act like he's never been in government before. And he's you know, because Blinken is saying we've been handed this situation. No, you helped create this situation. Let's not bullshit each other here, right? Now, at the same time, I mean, this was going to be messy no matter who did it, whether it was Trump, and Trump did conclude the peace deal in Qatar, in Doha, with the Taliban, right? He did draw down the troops to 2,500, but he didn't finish the job. And my point is, no matter who did the withdrawal, it was going to be crap. Of course, because the United States knows there is no Afghan security forces apparatus. This is nonsense. It's a lie. It's a joke. The only truthful thing that Blinken has said here is that, you know, we accomplished our objective. And what is that objective? Making money. Like, let's not kid each other here. The whole goal behind the war on terror is making money. When they say $2.2 trillion were spent, where did they go? Where did you spend them? Did you go to McDonald's? No, you went to the arms dealers. You went and bought weaponry to wage war and kill. So your friends who make these weapons in America, in the United States, made a killing. Literally and figuratively, made a killing. So it's been a huge success for arms dealers, okay? And they definitely succeeded in what they set out to do. But this idea that it's about human rights and, you know, we're setting up a democratic... No, you're not. The United States overthrows democratic governments. It does not establish them, right? That's the only successful thing it does in regards to democratic governments. Overthrows them. So it's very interesting, though, because they're talking about uniformed troops. And I think this is something very important to talk about, because what they are discussing here are people in uniform. What about private contractors? Because when we talk about the private sector, at several points in Afghanistan, there were more private contractors than troops, than uniformed troops, conventional armed forces, doing the same job, right? You have to understand something. A private contractor doesn't do something vastly different from what he would do if he were enlisted in the military. As a matter of fact, he does the same thing, but is paid 10 times more, because, you know, the goal here by the contracting company is to rip off the government. So they will get the US government to pay this company 10 times more for the same job, right? Which includes torture, or as they say, enhanced interrogation, right? Like in Abu Ghraib, which includes occupation, which includes brandishing weapons and executing people. So it's the very nature of it is the same. And if you recall, we looked at this a few months ago over here. This is from Stars and Stripes. You know, this is American military magazine. Look at what they're saying in January this year. Okay, they're saying troop levels are down, but the U.S. says over 18,000 contractors remain in Afghanistan. 18,000. I mean, that is staggering, right? Now, obviously, these figures have changed. The problem is we don't have any actual ones, because they're probably keeping it secret. You know, I've looked high and low, and we can't find any. Now, they're saying that. Now, again, I have to point out, this was from the Defense Department. They released a report saying that it was 18,000. Let's take a look over here at this article from Al Jazeera. This article is from August, from this month, from a week ago, on the 9th. And they're saying that contractors used by U.S. companies in Afghanistan are stuck in Dubai. Okay, foreign workers trying to get back to their home countries are stuck in limbo at hotels across Dubai due to the coronavirus pandemic. And they don't tell you how many of them are there. That's the thing. And they're referring only to foreign contractors. So this could be someone from the Philippines. It could be someone from Canada. Who knows, right? But we don't know the number of U.S. contractors. Isn't that interesting? No one's mentioned this. How weird. I mean, like I said, you had more contractors than troops at many points, including now in Afghanistan. So isn't it important to ask, where are these contractors? How many of them are in Afghanistan? Are they withdrawing? No one is asking this question. No one is answering this question. You don't think that's weird? And I need to remind people something. When Afghanistan was invaded in October, in autumn of 2001, right? So this is very shortly after the September 11th attacks. It was not like Iraq. It wasn't like shock and awe. You didn't have, you know, a massive aerial bombardment and an invasion starting in one night. No. The way they did it is they sent the CIA, right? So many of you may not know this. The CIA has a paramilitary force, right? Special Activity Center. I'm going to show you their logo over here. Take a look. That's their seal, okay? So these people, they were sent in to Afghanistan first. And their job was, you know, connecting with the Northern Alliance and then asking them to go and hunt bin Laden for them. And you know, they just brag about this openly now. Like, yeah, we went in there first. We went in to kick ass and we did it. I was watching something on PBS, an old documentary on PBS, where they're saying that on camera, these CIA operatives, right? They're like, we were the first ones in. Yeah. And they've written books about this. I think one of them is even called First One In. So, you know, what about the CIA? That's my question. Is the CIA leaving? Oh, no, they're not. And do you know how I know? Because the fucking CIA director said that in April. Look at this. This is from NPR, okay? So CIA Director William Burns told the Senate Intelligence Committee in April that the CIA would not be leaving Afghanistan when the military did. Quote, the CIA will retain a suite of capabilities, some of them remaining in place, Burns said, okay? And he just says that their ability to collect information will diminish when the U.S. withdraws. Yeah, but there's no mention of how many CIA are there. Are they paramilitaries? Are they not paramilitaries? What's going on? So, you know, when they talk about withdrawing from Afghanistan, I think for the most part, and this is a reasonable assumption, that they are talking about the uniformed troops. Because when it comes to private contractors and when it comes to the CIA, the first ones who invaded Afghanistan for the US in 2001, we don't know where they are. We have no clue how many of them are there. They're certainly not going to disclose this. And we don't know when they're leaving, or if they're leaving. As a matter of fact, they're saying they're not. The CIA director is saying this openly in April. We're not leaving Afghanistan. And I told you this. How many goddamn times have I sat here and I told you, where's the CIA? Are they leaving? They're not leaving. I told you this so many times. I don't know anyone else who's been saying this. So this is important to remember, that it wasn't just the Marines coming in. You had these paramilitaries, okay? And we have no clue what's happening with them. We have no clue. Now, I want to look at Biden's speech with you. Biden gave a speech, and I caught it live because, you know, this is a momentous speech. It's a very important speech. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan in 2001, and now it's 2021. And, you know, this conflict, I mean, calling it a conflict, again, this is kind of whitewashing what it is. It's an occupation, right? It's a brutal occupation by NATO, by the UK, US, Australia, Canada. So, of course, we had to catch this momentous speech. I don't remember the Bush speech particularly. I remember the one in Iraq. I definitely remember that one. But there are several things that he said in here that I want to look at with you, okay? So let's take a look at what Biden had to say about this withdrawal.
Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy.
Okay, so 1 second in and he's already lying. Joe Biden, like every single politician, Republican and Democrat, has stood in front of a microphone a gazillion times and justified the war in Afghanistan by saying precisely that it's for nation building. So now he comes and says, oh, it shouldn't have been for nation building. Well, motherfucker, why didn't you say that 20 years ago or 15 years ago or 10 years ago? You just had an epiphany all of a sudden? You lying sack of shit. They're such liars. They said this a million times, that they are there to create a centralized democracy, right? That they are there to hold free and fair elections, to supervise this process, that they will help build up the Afghan security forces. So now, because all of this failed, I mean, it was never meant to succeed. in the first place. But now that it's ostensibly failed, you can see that it's failed. There are images of it failing, being broadcast the world over. Now they say, we should have never done that. This was an error. It was a mistake. We had nothing to do with that. You liars. They're such goddamn liars. They lied about the invasion. They lied about the whole, during the entire duration of it. And now they're lying on the exit. Of course they are. Of course. Of course. I mean, just as a parenthesis, anyone with a brain who knows a little bit of history about Afghanistan, and especially anyone who's been to Afghanistan, right? So I've been there once in my life, and I have barely any recollection of it, just a tiny glimpse. Anyone who's been to Afghanistan or Pakistan, who's been to the Khyber Pass, so this is up in the mountains, this is in northern Pakistan, this is on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is a tribal area. Specifically here, this is a tribal area. It's a very key strategic area. The British have used it for, their colonial purposes. Even now, the Americans, NATO, have used it for ferrying supplies. There's literally a gate there because of, it's not just figuratively a gateway. There's a very famous gate there. I have a picture with it. So, this is a tribal area, and this is one of the key areas where the Taliban, Al-Qaeda have always been enormously powerful and had have always been able to give the U.S. a hard time. So anyone who knows this place, who's been to this place, knows that there was no way you are creating a centralized government. This is lunacy. This is lunacy. I'm not talking just about invading it, which, as you can see from the Soviets, you can see from the British, is a doomed endeavor from day one. I'm talking about creating a centralized government like they are saying, right? Maintaining occupation. This is a fool's errand. If you have been to this area and you have seen this area and you know this region, and so they know this damn well. Of course, they know this too. They know this. You're not going to succeed in that endeavor. And this is a tribal area. It is it's called no man's land for a very good reason. And never mind when we're talking about Helmand province. I mean, I've never been there. I'm not talking about there. I'm just talking about Khyber Pass, and the idea of we're going to create a centralized government and have all these people come and obey the rule of law, which is imposed by some white dudes from Britain and America. No, it is not happening. This is not happening. These people have self-respect. They're not going to bow down and tolerate some fucking invaders telling them what to do. You are sorely mistaken. You are sorely mistaken. I'm talking about the people of Pakistan, of Afghanistan, of this region. I'm not talking about some political group necessarily. I'm talking about in general, just culturally. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. So this was never going to work. And it's like no man's land, the Wild West. And this is why they were never going to succeed. This is why the Taliban has swept through Afghanistan in a matter of 2-3 days, right? I mean, of course, they were starting already in May, this full offense, because the deadline was in May. The U.S. did not keep its word, But the point is they did it very quickly and rapidly. And it's not just because of the lack of Afghan security forces, but it's also because they have a strong base of support, and the 20-year war has only helped to strengthen that. So let me continue with the speech. I'm sorry, but he lies so much, like every couple of seconds, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan remains today what it has always been: preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland. I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves. We spent over $1 trillion. We trained and equipped an Afghan military force with some 300,000.
Okay, I mean, this is insane. This is insane. I need to stop him right there. Do you hear what he's saying? He's saying, look, it's all their fault. They won't fight. They're fleeing the country. I mean, to be fair, Ghani did flee the country, but do you see how he's nailing every single failure on the Afghans? No, you lied. Joe Biden, you lied. I mean, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's his own case. But Biden, people like Biden have been in government the whole time. They were there at the beginning of the war on terror. They supported this from day one. And they lied and they said that they will succeed. It will only be a few months. It will only be, in and out very quickly. And they said it's nation building. He's a fucking liar. It's that simple. And now he's, because this is very politically egregious for him. These images, Biden will be remembered for this. Even though, I mean, they all should be, but he will be remembered for this image. And so, he's trying to save face by saying, oh no, it's not our fault. It's the Afghans. They won't fight. Well, who told you to meddle in their country in the first place? Why are you in their country? Now he has an epiphany. Oh, we spent so much money. We shouldn't fight a war. They're not willing to fight. Of course they're not willing to fight. You're fucking occupying them. You're occupying them. So he's an absolute charlatan. So let's continue.
Strong. It is wrong to order American troops to step up when Afghanistan's own armed forces would not. The political leaders of Afghanistan were unable to come together for the good of their people, unable to negotiate for the future of their country when the chips were down. They would never have done so while U.S. troops remained in Afghanistan, bearing the brunt of the fighting for them. As we carry out this departure, we have made it clear to the Taliban, if they attack our personnel or disrupt our operation, the U.S. presence will be swift and the response will be swift and forceful. We will defend our people with devastating force if necessary. Our current military mission will be short in time, limited in scope, and focused in its objectives. Get our people and our allies as safely as quickly as possible. And once we have completed this mission, we will conclude our military withdrawal. I'm now the fourth American president to preside over war in Afghanistan. 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I will not pass this responsibility on to a 5th president. I will not mislead the American people by claiming that just a little more time in Afghanistan will make all the difference. Nor will I shrink from my share of responsibility for where we are today and how we must move forward from here. I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me.
Yeah. All right. So there is his grand speech, and then he walked away like a coward. He had all these reporters who were trying to talk to him, who were trying to ask him questions, which I think is reasonable thing to do. No, at the very least, you should answer some questions. No, he just scurried away like a coward. Which, again, I mean, this is a bit confusing because if you're so convinced with what you're doing and you have such, such determination, you should easily be able to answer. Anyway, I don't know. But I just think this is extremely insulting from someone like Biden, who again, he's a staunch advocate for war in Iraq, which, he did the same for the war on terror throughout. I mean, just look at Obama, for example. Obama, when he was running, what did he say? He's going to stop mass surveillance. He's going to close Guantanamo Bay. He's going to stop the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He lied. And Biden was his running mate. They both lied. They got in. They made everything worse. They increased bombing. They increased drone strikes. They increased the war on terror. They expanded it to many more countries. They expanded mass surveillance. So he's a liar. Do you understand? So, I mean, number one, yes, it's good that, they're leaving, if they are leaving. But, this is, I don't know what to say. I mean, it would have been terrible no matter who did the withdrawal. We all know this. It's good that he's leaving, but it would have been better if they had never gone there in the first place. They should have never been there in the first place. I think the way that they are claiming, oh, it's about human rights and, they say the Taliban is a threat, but then when there are civilians trying to flee the Taliban, they won't help them. What is that? They have the resources, they have the logistics to do this, right? Biden just sent several more thousand troops to help with this evacuation, but they're only helping themselves. So this is number one. But number two is, are they actually withdrawing? Again, I showed you what's happening with the private contractors, with the CIA. Apparently the CIA is not leaving, and they were the ones who spearheaded the invasion of Afghanistan. So by definition, if they're the first ones in and they're still in there, can you really say the US is withdrawn? I don't know. I don't think they want you to know. So this is the question, right? This is the question. Now, in any case, for the Taliban, now, you know, they've come and taken, like I said, Kabul. They've taken all of these strategic major cities and provinces. I'm going to show you the map again, just so you have an idea of how much territorial control they exert at the moment. It's absolute. It's practically absolute. And so, you know, the thing is, no one has recognized them as a legitimate government yet. I mean, technically speaking, the vice president, since Ghani fled, the vice president, you know, according to their constitution, is in charge, at least formally. Nevertheless, that won't be lasting for long. You know, they're doing talks behind the scenes, and of course, at the same time, they held a conference. They said, you know, I'm talking about the Taliban here. They said that, you know, they're going to respect women's rights and women will be able to go to school and these sorts of things. And that basically all these fears and concerns that people have about women's rights, they're trying to alleviate them. That's what they say, at least. And then they said also that all the people who collaborated with the NATO troops, they're not going to be punished. There will be no revenge. They've said that at least. I don't know if any of this is true, but I'm just communicating to you what they said at the conference. And when it comes to recognizing them, the UK has said no. It will not, you know, it said no one should bilaterally recognize the Taliban as the government. The US says it's premature. Canada has also said it's against it. And in the meantime, when it comes to China, to Russia, to Iran, you have to remember Afghanistan shares a border with Iran and China, and Russia is not too far away. They have expressed, you know, neither condemnation, neither approval, right? So neither condemnation nor approval. They're basically saying they're going to wait and see. They're going to wait and see. I know from Iran, they want to see an inclusive government, so not just Taliban and not just Pashtun. You know, when it comes to China, again, they've stopped short of recognizing the Taliban as the legitimate government. So, in my opinion, I think this is much more important. Obviously, the Taliban do not give a shit what the US thinks because they just kicked them out of their country. So, I mean, the more important thing is what's happening now with China, with Russia, with Iran, because, you know, we're moving away from US hegemony. We're moving to a multipolar world. So, things like the Belt and Road Initiative, these regional alliances, whether it's with Iran, with China, with Russia, this is much more valuable in the long term and the short term. And if, you know, whatever happens in the relationships between these countries and Afghanistan, this is much more important. Because the US, the UK, these NATO countries, of course, they're not interested, they're not rushing to establish ties and recognize the Taliban as the government because the Taliban just humiliated them. Do you understand? So the only way that they will actually recognize the Taliban is if it's advantageous for them in some way, economic, political, who knows, right? And if you look at Vietnam, the example of Vietnam, since we're mentioning Saigon fell in 1975. Bill Clinton established ties with Vietnam in 95, if I'm not mistaken, full ties. So yeah, it could take decades maybe, who knows? But in any case, if not genuinely, then at least on the surface, this is a huge blow for the US empire. This is their longest war in history, their most costly one, if I'm not mistaken. And again, I think this is, it's absurd to measure it in number of dollars. I mean, the dollars were not lost. They went to the weapons industry, so they made a killing. The real loss that you measure it is in lives and what Afghans have had to endure. That's how you actually measure it, not what the foreign invaders have had to endure. That's the real metric. And so in that regard, it has been also extremely, extremely costly, of course. Many Afghans have suffered because of this. And, you know, when people say like, oh, what was it for? What was this war for? Who are you to complain? If you are from Afghanistan, yeah, you have a right to complain. But if you went and invaded someone else's country, you're going to come and complain now? No. You can complain to the weapons dealers who sent you there, sure. But, and the politicians. But, you know, the Afghans this is none of their fault. And the same goes for Vietnam and anyone else who's invaded. I mean, they don't owe you anything. It's the other way around. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how China, Iran, Russia, and other regional countries, regional players deal with the Taliban and the fact that they have territorial control now. Yeah, that's really going to be the next thing. And I want to know what happens with the CIA because, you know, this this is the US. They always meddle in Afghanistan's affairs. They don't necessarily need to be there. When they were arming the Mujahideen, such as, you know, a lot of them who went on to form the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, they were not there. They did not have US boots on the ground. Well, they did have CIA, but, you know, they didn't have the Marines from 79 to 89. But was the US involved in Afghanistan? Of course it was. And then they invaded in 2001 and stayed till 2021. So don't come here and tell me like, oh yeah, it's certain that the US is out. They will never do anything again. We don't know that. They have a history of doing that in this country specifically, not to mention countless others. So we don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. Remains to be seen, right?